everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of News for Normies, where I bring you the week's worth of news in a relatively short time frame. And this week's video might be pretty short itself, so we'll see what happens here. I'm Millennial Meditations, your host, and just trying to wake up the normies. So if you got some normies in your life, people that are checked out of the news, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed. Share this with those normies in your life, and follow me on all the social medias. They will be linked below. I've got the links. You can just one click find my profile, and go follow me on Rumble and Spotify. And again, like I mentioned last week, Rumble, if you have just a free account on Rumble, you can start playing the video, lock your phone, put it in your pocket, and the audio will still play. YouTube, you got to pay for that, so Rumble's better in every regard. So, before getting into national news, I wanted to talk about some stuff going on here at home. Cincinnati, Ohio. I think y'all remember earlier this year when a viral video went around after the Jazz Festival when a man was beaten in the streets by several other black men. Now, as I stated back then, what wasn't shown in the viral video was the white dude who got beat, being an asshole and throwing around racial slurs and all that stuff. So, as I said back then, you're being an ass, probably deserve to get punched in the mouth, not gang beaten, so keep that in mind. This week, though, Cincinnati has seen many deaths in the streets, so it's kind of a little bit back in the news. Monday, multiple people were shot across the city for different reasons. So, big city, safe, all that good stuff. Then yesterday, as I record this, around 2 a.m., a man was found dead inside his car after being shot multiple times. So, the Nasty Natty is really holding up to that moniker. That's why I really don't like going downtown for anything. Because if you want to go to a sporting event, you can't carry inside the venue, so why even have it in the car? It kind of makes it pointless. So, Cincinnati has seen an uptick in violence over the past, 6 months or a year. And, if y'all remember the police chief, Teresa Thietge, I think is how you pronounce it, had some pretty pitiful responses to the Jazz Festival and with the goings-on this past week, and many people have called for her to resign. However, as I record this, October 18th, 2025, she has yet to resign. So, keep putting the pressure on her, and for all of you who live in Cincinnati, if you want to see changes to the way your city runs, then vote for new leadership. It's that simple. And if this is easier said than done, but if there's no good options for leadership, then be the leader that the city needs. End of story. But speaking of leadership, President Trump met with President Zelensky yesterday, October 17th, to discuss the current state of the Russia-Ukraine war. This came one day after President Trump spoke with Vladimir Putin. Wow. Let me try that again. This came one day after President Trump spoke with Vladimir Putin for similar reasons. One point of contention that came up with Zelensky during their meeting was whether or not the United States was going to supply Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. If you don't know what these are, they are missiles that have a pretty decent range and a pretty good payload to them. So, congratulations, you're on the internet. You can look that up yourself in your own time. Now, if the U.S. were to do this, it would certainly escalate tensions between America and Russia, and don't really want to see that happen. So hopefully that is not the case. Hopefully we don't give Tomahawk missiles or any other long-range weaponry to Ukraine, because the war needs to end. Trump is on a tear right now of ending wars, so hopefully he can get this one in the bag too. Now, I say all that to say that President Trump is also set to meet with Putin in a few weeks. to discuss ending the war. So I will keep you all updated on that when it happens. However, before meeting with Zelensky, President Trump was asked about Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, and this is what he had to say about the matter.
Do you authorize present CIA operations in Venezuela as part of...
Well, I wouldn't say that, but some interesting things are happening around the world, I'll say that.
Mr. President, it has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently offering mediation. What should we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to fuck around with the United States. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I don't know about you guys, but I love the fact that Trump just casually drops the F-bomb on reporters like this. If you recall, he did the same thing earlier this year when he was talking about the whole Israel-Hamas thing. And that one made me laugh pretty hard, and this one's pretty good too. Now, this question also comes after the United States took out another drug boat. Now, you'd think that the cartels would learn after the first 3 drug boats got taken out, but I guess not. I guess they're hard learners, so I guess we're going to keep taking out drug boats. Cool. And I can only imagine the financial pain that the drug cartels are feeling when their drugs get sunk to the bottom of the ocean, but honestly, I don't care. Quit sending deadly drugs into the United States, and this wouldn't happen. End of story. Now, another thing that a lot of people keyed in on politics, but your average people aren't talking about, is the federal government shutdown. The government is still shut down, which means, why did I write this in my notes? It technically would mean that federal law enforcement wouldn't be paid until they reopen. However, there have been some workarounds and like essential employees are still getting paid, so that's good. And honestly, I think this might be the longest shutdown in our nation's history. I'm not entirely sure. I should have looked that up, so don't quote me on that one. But it's funny that this also coincides with the No Kings protests that are going on right now as I'm recording this. I'm just glad, though, that people are bringing awareness to the fact that we have a king trying to usurp the president here, because I was unaware that the British monarchy was trying to take over again. So if that is the case, then good on you protesters for trying to stop the British monarchy from taking over, because we fought a revolution and the War of 1812. And, I know in the War of 1812, they burned down the White House, but, we shot lead and muzzle-loading lead and cannon fire at redcoats. This is our land. Go home. Okay. Now, on a serious note, people like Ted Cruz are claiming that George Soros is funding a number of these protests, to which I could believe, because it's weird how, back in 2020 during the Summer of Love, pallets of bricks just showed up in the middle of the streets. Weird. However, Ted Cruz had a hot take on these protests going on.
Look, I think you're right. I think he is scared for his political life. And the Democrats today are a party of radical interest groups. Now, I will say one of the most important things President Trump has done recently is he has pledged that he's going to go after Antifa. And what I've been urging is follow the money, cut off the money. And you look at this No Kings rally, and there's considerable evidence that George Soros and his network is behind funding these rallies, which may well be riots all across the country. And Soros is writing the check. And so I've introduced legislation called the Stop Funders Act that would add rioting to the list of predicate offenses for RICO. Why is that? Because it would let the Department of Justice use RICO, racketeering, to prosecute the money that is funding the anti-Semitic protests on campuses, the pro-open border protest in LA and other cities, and these No King protests, anyone that is supporting rioting and violence, it lets you go after the money. And I'll tell you, there are more than 200 left-wing groups behind these No Kings rallies this weekend. They deliberately are blind to what each of the others are doing. That's part of how they avoid accountability. RICO is designed for precisely that sort of criminal enterprise. And so I believe the Senate, we ought to take up and vote on and pass our Stop Funders legislation. And I've urged both Pam Bondi at DOJ and Kash Patel at FBI, follow the money and prosecute those who are writing checks funding acts of violence, political violence or otherwise across the country.
Now, I know that I've called for very similar things in the past, but I have to admit that I was wrong. And paid protests are a legal form of protest under the Constitution. So I retract my previous statements. I don't agree with hitting them with RICO because, it's unconstitutional. However, I think the federal government could look into these companies doing that and, maybe revoke certain tax exemptions and the like from these groups and just let them hemorrhage money away, which would effectively shut them down at that point. So, maybe that's an avenue that could be taken. I don't know. I'm just a guy on the internet. And speaking of people having retarded, utterly just moronic statements about the current state of affairs, Chuck Schumer has called for people to forcefully rise up against the Trump administration because Letitia James was indicted on mortgage fraud.
Department as a political weapon. It is a disgrace, and every American, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, moderate, people should be forcefully rising up against this, speaking out against it, and making it clear how inimical this is to what our democracy has been stood for more than two centuries.
All right, thank you to Democrats.
But Chuck, I thought no one is above the law. I mean, Letitia James said it herself. Also, on top of the mortgage fraud, which this is one thing that I've only heard one person talk about, one person of note talk about, Letitia James apparently, allegedly, bought a home with the intent of hiding her niece, Nakia Monique Thompson, from the law in North Carolina. So, from the evidence put forth so far, it seems that Big Tish has committed the very crimes she accused Trump of, and more. So, in my opinion, she should definitely be behind bars for this, because, to quote her, no one is above the law. That's kind of why I wore the shirt I'm wearing today. Now, speaking of indictments, John Bolton, the former national security advisor, was also indicted on multiple charges this Thursday. Bolton was hit with 18 counts for unlawfully retaining classified information. And after the indictments of Bolton, President Trump called him, quote, a bad person, end quote, and, quote, a bad guy, end quote. That's putting it lightly, Mr. President. I love to see the indictments of people like James Comey, Letitia James, and John Bolton, but this is just the beginning. These people ultimately need to end up in prison for the crimes they committed on our country, and the fear of God needs to be instilled on those who would think of doing the same thing. If you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. Or let me know who else you would like to see behind bars. And also, this just came to mind. I didn't put this in my notes. Wasn't the Biden administration trying to claim that Trump also had classified information at his home in Florida, and that's why the FBI raided his home and snooped through his wife's underwear drawer? But then Biden also had classified documents just in a garage next to his Corvette that he shouldn't be driving. Makes you think about those charges against Trump back then. Really makes you think. Okay. Now, one thing that we really shouldn't think much about, or maybe we should, I don't know. Mitch McConnell suffered from another fall recently.
Go for it. Excuse me, Senator? My name is Stella. I want to ask, do you support ICE taking working people off the streets and kidnapping them?
And as much as I don't like the guy, I don't want to see this happening to him. You know, we all criticize Jill Biden for essentially forcing Joe to run for president. I think the same thing should be said about Mitch McConnell's family here. I mean, this is just sad. And if you watch that again, he reached for the guy that was walking next to him, as if he could like feel that he was about to fall. So I don't know if he had like a stroke or something like mid-walk, but Mitch McConnell is not well physically and mentally. Like, and again, if you watch that close, I mean, you don't even have to look at that closely, just look at his feet. If you're so old that you cannot walk indoors with hiking boots on, then you shouldn't be in elected office. I mean, seriously, we have to pass not only term limits, but I think age limits for Congress too. Because people like Mitch McConnell are too old to be running this country. And if you're watching this in Kentucky, y'all need to get your shit together with your politicians. Like, why? Why do you keep voting for him? I don't understand. He can't walk, but you want him to make laws about the future of the country? What is wrong with you people? And by you people, I mean Kentucky. Maybe I need to do a Steven Crowder change my mind type thing down in Kentucky about Mitch McConnell. This is just insane. Now, on to our ICE segment here. A judge has ruled that ICE in Chicago must take down the fencing around their facility on Broadview, I think is what it was. I've never been to Chicago. Don't plan on it. It's a shithole city. The judge has claimed that the fencing is interfering with a roadway where, you know, first responders could have a harder time getting to somebody who's having, you know, an emergency, you know, like an ambulance or something. But we all know what the real reason is that this liberal judge wants to make the ICE facility easier to attack by these far leftist terrorists that are trying to interfere with ICE doing their job. Also, a DHS vehicle was rammed by an illegal alien who then attempted to flee. This illegal alien was chased down and arrested, but protesters immediately showed up and attempted to surround law enforcement.
Again, when you first got on scene and you were able to talk to some neighbors and some witnesses there on the scene and describe to us what initially...
Judy, wait 1 second. Okay. I see Chicago police are arriving and putting themselves in the middle of the situation right now. It appears there might be someone in command, from what I can see, approaching the area. I'm not sure if this is in an attempt to start dispersing the crowds. But we have just in the last few seconds seen Chicago police, who had remained at bay, now starting to put themselves in the middle of the, oh God. Protesters are starting to throw rocks. We're going to get away from the scene right now, Judy.
Okay, Michelle, you take care of yourself. I'm going to let her get off the phone. We really appreciate it. Get to a safe place. So what you're watching, what you continue to watch, is exactly what Michelle has been describing. This, again, at the intersection 105th and Avenue N. Last Michelle said as protesters started throwing rocks, and you can see that there is some chemical being deployed right there at this intersection. Just prior to this, you did see what appeared to be Chicago police officers and some commanders there trying to have some type of a dialogue with the protesters there at the intersection. It would seem that they were trying to disperse the crowd and maybe usher them off the street so that the agents could possibly move their vehicles. And it was at that point that Michelle noticed that protesters started throwing rocks, and this is the end result. Earlier, we had heard that there were pepper balls being sprayed into the crowd because someone had thrown eggs, or some neighbors had thrown something at the agents. And now reports of rocks being thrown, and that was coming from Michelle, a reporter right there on the ground. She has now gotten off the phone with us. They're trying to get to a safer place, of course, but we can continue to watch this picture. Fortunately, with Chopper 7 up in the air, we can still continue to monitor what is happening here. Again, if you are just joining us here on stream, this situation has been very tense for the last, maybe about 40 minutes.
Now, don't forget that last week I discussed an anarchist website that was posting intimate details about that facility in Chicago. So adding the removal of fencing to that facility is just asking for trouble to arise. I mean, we've already seen rioters show up and try to block cars and attack cops and, in some cases throw rocks at people, which is an assault on a police officer, and you should be in prison for that. But yeah, these Democrat cities just want the crime. It just blows my mind. See what I just said about Cincinnati. I cannot stress this enough. The Democrat Party cares more about foreign people than they do American citizens. End of story. When you have Democrats that want to interfere with ICE doing their job, that means they prioritize foreign people over you. Change my mind. I would love to hear it. And we're staying on ICE for a minute because apparently Mexican drug cartels are offering bounties on ICE and CBP agents in Chicago.
Saying Mexican cartels are now attempting to track, harass, and target Immigration and Border Patrol agents with violence. These alleged threats come as tensions rise here in the U.S. over crackdowns in Chicago and Portland. Here's Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, Homeland Security officials say they're seeing intelligence that Mexican cartels are attempting to track, harass, and target Immigration and Border Patrol agents with violence. In a statement late today, the department warned that cartels are offering $2,000 for gathering intelligence on federal officials and their families, often with the goal of doxing them. $5,000 to $10,000 for kidnapping or non-lethal assaults, and up to $50,000 for the assassination of high-ranking officials. The alleged new threats come amid rising tensions in Chicago and Portland involving immigration officials conducting broad deportation sweeps. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem telling President Trump in a recent cabinet meeting that she's stepping up security.
We're hardening all of our buildings and making sure that we have more security measures, snipers on the roof, people to protect our law enforcement while they're out there on the streets.
Sources telling ABC News the intelligence has been developed by Homeland Security, FBI, and DEA officials. Authorities calling the intelligence evidence of a structured bounty program to incentivize violence against federal personnel.
In that video, you see people, waving the flags of like Mexico and stuff. And it's funny how people so desperately love Mexico and wave the Mexican flag, even though they're here living in the United States. Like, what the fuck, man? If you love Mexico so much, go live there. If you bitch about America all the time, you don't have to stay. Nobody is keeping you here. This isn't North Korea. You can leave. You're free to leave. Like, I don't get it. If you love the place so much, go there. But no, what really is happening is that, these people want the privileges that America offers, but they don't want to have the responsibilities that it takes for those privileges. kind of why I do these videos. You know, we have the right to vote, but we have the responsibility of knowing what and who we're voting for. And that's going to come up again here in a little bit. That was a good one. Anyway, moving on, ICE arrested a police officer in Chicago who was an illegal immigrant.
The fact that a police department either missed or overlooked a B2 overstay, which is a federal statute, to me that's not a good thing.
So he was a visa overstay, but even that, because non-citizens can't have a gun. So how can you be a police officer?
Correct. So I mean, per Chicago, they have a rule from their own police department that all they require is a work authorization. Okay, that's
to
fine.
be a police officer in Chicago or
that's their
in
requirement.
Illinois.
That's their requirement. That if that's the case, they still cannot ignore the fact that he was overstaying. That's a federal statute. So whether or not they came up or they missed it or whatever it is, I'm not blaming them, but it was missed, right? So we need to do something.
And we've confirmed that, so he's visa overstay.
Correct.
Wow.
Hey, good job, guys. Good job.
So this is breaking. Apparently this gentleman here is a police officer at Hanover Police Department, just outside of Chicago, is here illegally, overstayed his visa. How he got a job as a police officer. Crazy.
So how long have you been a police officer?
Since January 8th.
January of this year?
Correct. I just finished the academy.
You just finished the academy, okay. All right.
You had to get that.
Just to confirm though too. Yeah. So they hired you on, you had work authorization?
Correct.
And you were able to carry a firearm?
No.
Okay.
On duty, yes. Off duty, no.
So on duty you could carry a firearm?
State of Illinois, you need a forward and a CCW to carry a weapon off duty.
But on duty you could?
Correct.
Wow. You know, what's crazy about this is I don't know anything about him other than he says he loves America. The problem is he's not even a citizen. So he can't own a firearm legally in our country, but he's being given a firearm by the state of Illinois as a police officer in the state. And apparently all you have to have is work authorization in this state. That is insane. You haven't even sworn allegiance to our country yet, and yet we're giving you a firearm. Now, this guy may be a great guy, but how many others are working in our country as police officers who aren't great guys? That's insane. That law has to change. I mean, you can't own a firearm unless you're an American citizen. But police departments are going to give you a firearm and allow you to use that in a potentially deadly force situation with citizens when you haven't even passed a citizenship test, but you're supposed to be upholding the Constitution of our country. That is insane.
So if you click on the link that I have down below, and this is way late in the video, but I gotta say it now, I have references below as well for all the things I'm talking about today. That way you know I'm not just making shit up. So on this story, the police officer who was arrested in Chicago, the guy that was arrested by ICE, is a white guy who was here illegally. So yet again, we have another example of illegal immigration being about just that, illegal immigration, not about a specific race. It's a simple concept. Come to the United States legally and don't be a shitbag. It's as simple as that. Now, the process may take a while, but that's the price you pay for wanting to become an American citizen. You know, you can't just... We'll just take our neighbors to the north. You know, you can't just walk into Canada and expect them to give you free shit. Like, if you just try to walk into Canada, they'll be like, oh, sorry, mate, you gotta go. That was weird. Why did I do it like that? That was like a weird blend of Canadian and Australian. Anyway, yeah, you can't do that to Canada. They'll boot your ass out. So why is America supposed to be any different? try that with Britain, with France, with Germany, with Russia, Estonia, the Czech Republic. Like, you can't just go to a country and expect free shit. And you can't go to another country without becoming a legal citizen and expect to be part of their police. Like, what? Why do these principles apply to every other nation on earth other than America? I cannot figure that out. But as I've stated before, liberal logic is meant to make no sense. All right, last story about ICE. LA County, out there in the glorious state of California, may declare a state of emergency because of the ICE raids. And once again, the Democrats are prioritizing illegal aliens instead of the American people. If this goes into effect, every single politician who would vote on this state of emergency should be put in jail for aiding and abetting criminals. It is literally a crime to just walk over the border. It is. You know, trespassing is a crime. I can't just walk into the guy's house next door to me, sit on his couch, eat his food, drink his beer, expect him to pay, you know, for my medical bills and stuff. So why does the same not apply to the country as a whole? I am dumbfounded at this. Okay. That concludes our ICE segment for this week. But speaking of shithole states, we are moving on to New York, specifically New York City. Zohran Mamdani, the frontrunner for the mayoral race up there, may have broken laws regarding election funding. He is alleged to have taken almost $13,000 from foreign contributors, which violates city, state, and federal laws. Now, according to the Daily Mail, which is linked below, Mamdani has received donations from 170 people with foreign addresses, and over half of those have not been returned as of October 12th, 2025. This is all in that article, by the way. Should the funds not be returned, Mamdani could face legal penalties, including large fines and or prison time. I really don't want to see this guy win, but if he does, someone should file these lawsuits immediately and have him ousted. And if you think this is the worst part about Mamdani, well, your opinion's about to get way worse.
The only shared interest between socialists and Islamists is the destabilization and ultimately the destruction of the West. And what better way to do that? And I'm choosing my words carefully, but you'll see this next video and understand that I mean it. What better way to do that than to instigate and orchestrate an armed standoff? Here, you have Robert Akle detailing to our Mug Club undercover journalist how Mamdani plans to handle President Trump's immigration enforcement, which is a legitimate role of the federal government. And just really pay attention to what you're hearing.
What did the police think about Zohran? Because I know that's like a little contentious.
Just what they think. You're a city employee. You get told what to do. Shut up. When did you get an opinion? You don't have a political opinion. You're nonpartisan. That's the way it should be.
If Mamdani wins, like, will he be able to like stop ICE from coming in here and taking our undocumented citizens?
Make it harder for them, but the only thing he can do is stop the NYPD from helping them.
We would have control over the NYPD afterwards,
like he can go to the NYPD and be like, do not let them into the courthouses.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they're going
And
into
what
the
would
courthouse.
they say?
Well, ICE wouldn't be able to go in.
Stop the NYPD from helping them, which means not allowing them to do their job. ICE is well within not only their purview, but they have, by and large, a mandate of the masses to deport people who are here illegally.
Now, good on the team at Louder with Crowder for doing this undercover work. I really, really enjoy this kind of stuff. And this isn't the first one they've done of something of this sort. So this is just a snippet from yesterday as I record this, yesterday's podcast. I'll give you a direct link to the whole podcast to go watch and or listen to. And I highly encourage you watch the entire thing because it gets way worse than that. So New York y'all need to get your shit together. And not just on the right, or not just on the left, but on the right as well. Because a group chat was leaked from the New York Young Republicans, and the texts within that group chat don't look great. Within the group chat, many racial slurs were used, and one person described rape as epic. I've heard some people say that these are dudes just, just trying to be edgy, and it's like locker room talk or whatever, but I don't even know if in context these texts would look good, so I know it should go without saying, but as a registered Republican myself, I highly condemn the racist remarks in this group chat and all the comments about rape as well. Can't even believe I have to say that. But now, with that being said, 'cause it's not that hard to do, I'm calling for every Democrat politician to condemn everyone who celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder and the text sent by Virginia AG candidate Jay Jones when he fantasized about murdering his Republican opponent and his family, including the children. The one and only Democrat that I have seen do this so far is John Fetterman.
I'm the only Democrat in my family. I grew up in a conservative part of Pennsylvania, and I grew up and I know and I love people that voted for President Trump. But they are not fascists. They're not Nazis. They're not trying to destroy the Constitution and those things. And that's part of another thing. I refuse to call people Nazis or fascists, or I would never compare anybody to Hitler and those things. And now that kinds of extreme rhetoric is going to continue. We're going to be more likely in resulting in extreme kind of outcomes and political violence and doing all these kinds of things like Charlie Kirk. For me, all I could say is like, let people grieve. Give people the space. I'm not going to use that terrible thing and that Pasek assassination to make my argument and try to put out my views. It's like, my God, he's a father that had his neck blown out by a bullet. And now people have forgotten. President Trump in my state, was shot in the head. And if that could you imagine where our nation would be if he was hit in the same way with Kirk? We really got to turn the temperature down. And we can agree to disagree on these kinds of things. But right now, shutting down the government, I just can't take it that.
And as time goes on, I like Fetterman more and more. And it seems like him having that stroke brought some sense into his mind. Weird how that worked. And I may not agree with everything he says, but Fetterman and Ro Khanna are like the only two notable Democrats that I can think of who seem to not be completely insane. I disagree with a lot of what Ro Khanna says and vows for, but he seems like he is a reasonable guy. We'll put it there. But because of Fetterman's recent comments, rumors are speculating that the DNC is trying to have him ousted. So those are rumors. Just clarifying that now. If those rumors are true, it would really show you the general sentiment of the Democrat Party in today's America. Alrighty, coming to a close here. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments on Wednesday in regards to the Voting Rights Act. Legal arguments have stated that the Louisiana congressional map of 2022 was discriminatory against black voters, which was then taken to a federal court and then worked its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court may strike down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which, in short, from my understanding, the Voting Rights Act, it talked about, you can't draw congressional maps based on race. Long story short. Again, you're on the internet, you can look more into that. Now, if the Supreme Court does strike down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, it could grant Republicans anywhere from 12 to 19 additional seats in Congress. And that would mean that there would be 12 to 19 less Democrats in Congress. So, thank you, Louisiana, for making this a bigger deal, I suppose. I would love to see it. And again, sources below. This may go into effect if the Supreme Court strikes that down. It would take place in mid-2026, right before the midterms. So that's some smart thinking, I suppose. And that's why people get paid more money to do that than me, because I'm just a dude on the internet. And finally, I love it when journalists get mad because they think they're so righteous and, noble and whatever. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth implemented some new rules as well as reinforced old rules for journalists within the Pentagon. But because rules are actually in place now, many of these journalists are bitching about the situation, saying their usual lines like, "This is an act of aggression toward a free and fair media," blah. Even though, over the past several years, the corporate media has had a 92% unfavorable look at President Trump, but it's fair and balanced media. Yeah, okay, whatever. So because of this, Brian Stelter had to run his mouth on the issue too.
Reporters have been showing up at the Pentagon today and handing in their press passes. This is an extraordinary moment showing that the Pentagon is not changing, not backing away from this drastic, radical new policy. And the news outlets, the reporters, the editors, the media lawyers who said this is unacceptable, they're not changing their tune either. So all the major networks, all the major wire service and newspaper reporters who cover the Pentagon day in, day out are turning in their credentials. And essentially, as of tomorrow, you won't have those journalists able to work out of the Pentagon complex anymore.
And I swear, Brian Stelter just has such a punchable face. I can't stand his smug, holier-than-thou demeanor that he has all the time. I don't know why he is like that, but he is on such a high horse and needs to be knocked down a peg. And now, to clarify, I am not calling for violence against Brian Stelter. I am not calling for violence against Brian Stelter. Making that obviously clear. I just cannot stand the guy. I can't, dude. He is the epitome of what the Democrat Party is. Just this smug, holier than thou, I'm better than you asshole. And I cannot stand it. Finally, I think the reason why, and again, this is just my opinion, I think the reason why the crackdown is going on with the press inside the Pentagon comes in light of recent attacks on ICE, CBP, DHS, and leaks from within the Trump administration about the goings-on of law enforcement and military plans. Plus, the Trump administration has just brokered a peace deal between Hamas and Israel, and is trying to bring an end to the Russia-Ukraine war, as I talked about at the top of this video. Therefore, if something was to be leaked, it could jeopardize a potential peace deal or a peace deal in the works, or cause bigger problems going forward. So, if if I were to go to work and just say, I don't feel like wearing steel-toed boots and safety glasses, my boss would look at me and say, bro, what the fuck? Like, you gotta wear these. And if I'm like, nah, I don't want to, then there's the door, bud. Like, we got rules here. So, every job has rules. You gotta follow the rules. Just makes common sense, I suppose. So, I have rambled long enough. If you enjoyed this content, let me know your thoughts down below. And make sure you share with your normies. Follow me on the social medias. Those are linked down below, as well as references for everything I talked about. And stay away from the No Kings protests, because I don't want to see people, bludgeoned in the street. With that, I will see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you.